Now that we've shared these tips, let's go ahead and begin our session. Hello and welcome to Maintaining Member Motivation, a webinar for AmeriCorps VISTA leaders. My name is Andy King and I'm a Senior Training Specialist at AmeriCorps VISTA in Washington, D.C. And from the comments that many of you shared prior to us getting started, it seems that at least some of you are really lucky and you've got VISTAs on your team who seem to be pretty highly motivated, still have great energy. A couple of you mentioned that you've got some members who maybe aren't as motivated as they once were, or that their motivation has gone down for a variety of reasons. So those are great, and we're going to have a chance to dive into looking at why that might be, and you'll have more chances to share some of your experiences in this realm. And even if you haven't seen it in your own members, I'm sure that all of you have had your own experience at one time or another of not feeling so excited or motivated by a particular project or a task that you're assigned to do. And you know, as I mentioned, some of you have seen instances where your VISTAs seem to face something similar. So our topic today is motivation and how we can support it in our VISTA members. We have two goals that we're going to focus on today. First, we'll examine some of the key factors that contribute to member demotivation. Now, some of you might be thinking, wait a minute, I came here to talk about motivation, so why are we going to focus on demotivation? Well, once we get into this, you'll realize that if we're talking about motivation, we really cannot ignore the causes of demotivation, the things that cause us to lose our drive. And then our second goal, we will discuss and identify strategies and techniques that we can use as VISTA leaders to minimize member demotivation factors. This webinar includes some opportunities for conversation, chances for you to talk to each other and to share with your leader colleagues what it is that you're facing and what you're doing that seems to work. So I'm going to invite you to bring your insights and experiences and your wisdom to the table. And by doing that, we'll be able to enrich our conversation, and hopefully you can take something practical away from this conversation. So taking a look at the agenda for the session, we'll start by looking at what is motivating for people, and then what challenges this whole concept of motivation, because that's a good starting point, just to make sure we're all on the same page. Then we'll look at some motivational theories and some research models that are out there that we might be able to incorporate into our own work. We'll look at the key contributing conditions that lead to and support motivation. And as you'll see, there are some very concrete, specific conditions that we can create within a workplace to motivate employees, or in our case, VISTA members. And then we'll talk about how we can promote this, learning about what these conditions are, but what can we do to promote them, in your role as a VISTA leader? How can you help your VISTA supervisors also to be able to promote these? And then we're going to look at 4 guiding principles of motivation and how you can just incorporate those and talk about how you can apply all of this information in a practical way. All right, so that's what we're going to do. But before we do that, I'm going to invite you to take part in a little math problem, a little quiz, just to get our brains going a little bit. You've probably had a lot of other stuff going on today, so we're going to just shift gears here. So this is a chance to kind of wake up and use your brain a little bit differently. So you'll see here on the screen there's a little key that assigns each letter a different number. What I'd like you to do is take the word skills, S-K-I-L-L-S, add up the corresponding number for each one of those letters, and then when you've got the total, use the chat panel and write in your answer. So as soon as somebody has the correct answer, then we're going to move on. So, all right, we've got our first answer here. Not quite right. Oh, let's see. Chelsea. Chelsea got it right. Answer is 82. So There you can see the math behind it if you want to check your own work. Good job, Chelsea. So skills adds up to 82. Next up is the word aptitude. A few more letters, so a little bit harder. I'll be quiet so you can do the math. I think aptitude is a great word. It doesn't get used a whole lot, but it's a great word. A lot of letters. Let's see. Ashton says 96, and you're absolutely right. Good job. All right. Next word is knowledge. More common word. Still got a lot of letters in it, though. So a lot of math to be done. Appreciate you guys humoring me by doing math. Nice shout out from Olivia for math skills. Thank you. Hopefully somebody's doing the math out there. Marissa says 96, and she's absolutely right. Good job. Somehow the number was the same as aptitude. All right, we've got one more, and the word is attitude. Chelsea, you're the ringer, 100. Absolutely right. Good job. Absolutely. So 100. So let's take a look at all of these numbers together. So skills, you see, was 82. Aptitude and knowledge were both 96. And attitude has a score of 100. Just kind of a random thing. And it's funny that it worked out this way. If you assign, you know, the letter A, the number 1, and B is a 2, and so on. And then see the score associated with these words, you know, skill, aptitude, and knowledge, you know, they've got strong value associated with them, but the biggest one is the word attitude. It has the highest score. So this is just kind of a metaphor for the importance of attitude in someone's work and productivity. You can have skills, you can have aptitude, you can have knowledge, but if you don't have attitude, if you don't have that motivation and that drive to put those other things to use, you're probably not going to be very productive, and all your other skills are not really going to materialize in a positive way. All right, so that was fun. Thank you for indulging me in that. Hopefully it got your brain thinking in a little bit different way. So let's talk a little bit about what we mean when we talk about motivation. Of course, there are lots of theories and frameworks that have been developed in a range of different fields like psychology and sociology, even criminal justice and business administration and management. All of these different disciplines talk about motivation, and they look at them, you know, naturally from different points of view. At its most basic, motivation is what causes us to act. It is the why behind human behavior. And we can think about motivation that comes from external sources like a paycheck or a punishment. Those are often referred to as extrinsic motivators. But for our conversation here, I really want to focus on motivation that comes from within. What's often called intrinsic motivation. So that's where we'll focus. And with intrinsic motivation, a person engages in a behavior because they find it personally rewarding in some way. So essentially the behavior or the result of the behavior is its own reward, right? And we all have things like this in our own lives, whether you like gardening just for the fun of it, or solving puzzles because you like the challenge, or one that unfortunately doesn't apply to me, say keeping your desk clean because you really like it. You know, you like cleaning your desk. Not me, but some people do. And in the workplace, we look to bring on team members who have a certain amount of intrinsic motivation for the work. You know, even if they're motivated in part by a paycheck, right? I mean, we all need to live and we all need to have that living allowance. But it's the intrinsic motivation that makes people strive to do a really good job and to go above and beyond. So that's why it's so important. So here's a way of looking at motivation that looks at how motivation appears with a lot of people when they first start out in their work. So when someone starts a new role, whether it's a paid employee or as a VISTA member, at the beginning, they're really motivated, right? And we saw this in some of the comments earlier. New VISTAs come on and they're really gung-ho. And generally speaking, that's why somebody wants to take the position, right? Unless they're put into some situation where they're forced or required to do something. But mostly, when you take a job or someone signs on to become a VISTA, they're generally excited because they have this intrinsic motivation, right? The inner desire to perform and achieve that's really high. So what you see at the beginning, everyone brings both the aptitude, because that's why that person is recruited and selected, right? They've got the background, the skills, the knowledge. They've got the aptitude for the position as well as having a really positive attitude. So they've got both. They're excited. So now what happens a few weeks or a couple months later, with some individuals, we see that gradually they're not as motivated as they were at the beginning. Are they still skillful? Sure, right? Their skills didn't go away. The aptitude is there. However, their attitude has changed. And as you can see represented here, the attitude T has fallen away, and now they're only left with the aptitude, but not their positive attitude. So what's been lost here is the motivation. If someone's not motivated at all, then it's really hard to work with them to develop a sense of motivation. And if they weren't motivated at the beginning, then that might be our fault or the organization's fault. It means that maybe we selected the wrong person to start with. We can't blame the individual. We have to look at our own recruitment and selection and decision making around that if they were never motivated to serve in the first place. So the question for managers or supervisors or leaders is, what can we do to keep the motivation of the people that are working for us, right? To not demotivate them. So that's a key aspect of motivation, because generally people are motivated at a workplace when they start out. That's why they chose to take the position in the first place. So why suddenly do we look at people and say, man, I can't believe this person was so excited, you know, the first few weeks, what happened? So we want to take a look at some of the things that can lead to demotivation so that we can avoid demotivating our own members. All right, so here's a chance for some conversation among all of you. I want to get your thoughts on this question. So take a moment to think about your own team, your own VISTAs at your own site, and ask yourself this question. What are some of the reasons that your members who lose motivation, any of them that seem to have lost their motivation, what are some of the reasons that that happens, that they lose their motivation or become demotivated? So again, you can use the chat if you haven't yet opened that up. Remember, move your mouse to the bottom of the screen and you'll see some icons appear there. Click the chat, it will open the chat window. If you want to move the chat over to the right of the screen, go up to the top. Under Review Options, you can exit full screen, and the chat panel will move over to the right so you can see the slides and the chat at the same time. All right, so we've got some things coming in now. Let me maximize this so I can see it all. All right, so some ideas. Ideas being shot down by supervisors or even community partners. Yeah, that can really demotivate you. Feeling overwhelmed, that can cause you to become disinterested in the work. Let's see, Olivia says that in her area, the VISTA stipend provides more money than local work options. And as she sat in an interview today, that became really clear. So motivation doesn't necessarily come from service. In her case, it's coming from the living allowance. Another reason for becoming demotivated is the position isn't what they thought it would be. So there was some difference in expectation or some misunderstanding. So having the site sort of require the VISTA to get involved in activities or tasks that aren't focused on the VAD. So a little bit of the bait and switch, like, I'm not doing what I thought I was going to be doing. Yeah, absolutely, that can be demotivating. Someone has a VISTA with medical issues, and so they had to take up all their leave just to go for doctor visits and checkups. Yeah, so we're hearing again this notion of getting different information up front than the reality, or maybe they didn't hear it quite as it was being explained before they started, but once they get in the position, they realize it's not exactly what they expected. Sometimes there are changes in the organization, so whether that's a staff change, as Arena has talked about, or in other cases maybe budgetary changes or partners going away, too much work or too little for them to work on. Of course, that can be demotivating, or even just a lot of change from week to week, not knowing what to expect when you come in. Yeah, there's a common theme about being asked to do tasks that are not related to their VAD. Some supervisors are not as easy to work with, and then in some cases compassion fatigue. So you're working on tough stuff, right? Working in impoverished communities, you're seeing the very real and devastating impacts of poverty in people's lives, and the work is not easy, so that can certainly wear you down. Here's another case of understanding or misunderstanding, and that is the site staff not understanding the member's role and not really working to find out what it is that the VISTA should be doing. Yeah, some lack of role clarity, not only among the members, but among other staff and coworkers. Yeah, sometimes the VISTAs really want to belong, right? They want to be part of a group, part of a cohort, and other folks maybe don't share that. So that can be demotivating if nobody wants you on their team, or they don't want to include you the way they do some other staff folks. And then Melissa mentions if their term is coming to a close. So the classic case of senioritis, right, where maybe you've got a month left and you're mostly done, but not quite, and it's just really hard to, be thrilled for those last few weeks of service. So these are all really great ideas, great examples of what can lead to demotivation. So if you haven't seen some of these at your site, you might take note, because some of these might crop up within your own team. And just knowing that these are possibilities can help you be a little bit prepared for them. Some of them are cyclical, right? Some of them happen at different times, like this one about people who are very late in their service having their motivation drop way off. Others can happen really at any time. So thank you all. Let's see, there's one more that I haven't read. Again, back to the VISTA assignment. Some VISTAs might feel like other VISTAs have a better assignment than they do. So it's like, gee, how come they get to do all the cool stuff and I'm stuck doing this really boring work? So that can undermine your motivation as well. Great, thank you, Catherine. So these are what you've brought to the table here are all really concrete, specific reasons why members might become demotivated during their service term. So we're going to try to keep some of these in mind as we now go through and look at what are some of the contributing factors to demotivation. So thank you for that. It's given us a really good foundation. So what you're going to see here is that most of what these examples that you've shared fall under this framework that has 5 key reasons for employee demotivation. A lot of this work comes from psychology, done primarily in the workplace on regular paid employees, but I think it's all relevant to our VISTA members. So let's take a look at these 5 categories. First of all is lack of direction, and some of what you shared through the chat focused a lot on this. So questions about the VAD, being asked to do things that weren't part of the VAD, or having lack of clarity, nobody really knows what my role is here. All of those kinds of questions around direction can be really demotivating. Lack of resources, I didn't hear this one so much, but oftentimes this comes up like, gee, we've got all these great ideas, we'd love to do these things, we just don't have the money or the budget or the materials or the people or the time to do it. So that's a common category. Lack of knowledge. Sometimes people don't know how to do something, they don't have the knowledge or the skill to do it, and they try, but they get frustrated because they don't really know how to do what's being asked of them, and so the task is way harder than it really needs to be. So that can be demotivating, not being able to actually do something that you're asked to do. Another big category is lack of respect or dignity. And some of you mentioned this. Some of you said that the members' ideas are being shot down by the so the supervisor, or by a community member, or a VISTA member is not taken seriously, in the workplace, that they're seen as maybe an intern, or that they don't really count. That can really pull the rug out from under you and really make someone feel like their ideas, their existence, their presence really doesn't matter. So that's a very quick way to demotivate somebody. And then the last one is lack of engagement. Again, some of you said if your member doesn't have a chance to actually use their ideas or have a way to implement them, if they can't really engage with the team in a meaningful way, if they're not included and they're not part of the conversation, they're not engaged in what's going on, that's going to drive them away pretty quickly. So you can see how pretty much all of the ideas that you shared can fall into one of these major categories. So this is the part of what we're going to use as we go forward. So I mentioned at the beginning that we're going to look at some specific models of motivation. And again, these come from researchers that look from a couple of different points of view. And obviously from research, a lot of it done in the fields of psychology, or in neuroscience, social sciences, and neuroleadership. And so we're going to take a look at these. There are tons of them out there, of course, but we're going to look really at just 3 models in this session. 3 that are pretty well known, they're well received, and they get used in a lot of different places. So you might read about them, or you might have seen them referenced by different institutions, organizations, or authors or other individuals globally. So the first model is one that some of you may already be familiar with. It's created by psychologist Dr. Martin Seligman. And he is in today's management and leadership field considered to be sort of the guru of positive psychology. So as you can see here, he's published some works. He's done really extensive research and created some of the most highly quoted work that's out there in positive psychology. One of the books you may be familiar with is called Learned Optimism. And it talks about a lot of the work that he's done, he and his team, help the reader to understand why human beings have a tendency to see things right away from a negative point of view rather than a positive point of view. And it talks about how we can strive to become that, how to learn how to be optimistic. So Learned Optimism, it's a great piece of work. So anyway, Dr. Seligman has done a lot of work related to motivation. And the theory that he brings to the table is called the PERMA theory. So each of the 5 letters there stands for a different dimension. And these are really conditions that need to exist in a workplace in order for people to be self-motivated, that intrinsic motivation to be there. So the 5 elements or the 5 conditions he talks about, the P is positive emotion. Individuals like to work at a place where there's a lot of positivity around. People are happy, friendly, have a kind of positive emotions. And when the rest of the people there are really positive towards their work and towards their life, that kind of has an effect on everybody else around them. It kind of seeps into the culture of the place. And especially if you have leadership with a very positive approach to things, that can flow down and create a positive emotion throughout the workplace. And of course, everyone likes to be in a happy place. If our home front is happy, then we love to come and spend time at home. Likewise, if our workplace is happy, then we look forward to going to work. So positive emotion, really important. The letter E stands for engagement. So again, we saw this just a moment ago, and some of you pointed out in your examples that your VISTAs are really self-motivated when they have that chance to meaningfully engage. So how do you engage, or rather, how do you create opportunities for engagement? Well, the PERMA theory talks about having the opportunity for individuals to use their strengths, another concept that you're probably familiar with, and then having tasks, meaningfully challenging tasks that they can engage in. So they can put their skills to use, their strengths, they can put them to use in a really relevant way, solving and addressing important problems. So that's the engagement piece. The R is for positive relationships. Humans are social animals, and so we want to be connected to other people, to have social connections. And if you look at why, say, social media has taken hold so quickly, it's because it caters to one of these basic human needs, right? That need for social connections and to get some kind of positive feedback and reinforcement from people we know. If you're connected to great people on your Facebook or your Instagram, people that make you happy, then you're likely to look forward to opportunities to check your feed and see what's in there. In the workplace, if you have positive relationships with your colleagues or even just one coworker, then you're going to look forward to going in and seeing that person and having those moments of connection. All right, the M of PERMA stands for meaning and purpose. And it's really important when people see that what they do has meaning and that it has a connection to their own sense of purpose, their own personal values, right? So yeah, I'm doing work that's important, but also it's meaningful for me. It connects with what I think is important in life. And of course, people are really motivated to work on those things. And the 5th element is accomplishment. So we Many of us have a need to accomplish things, to be able to see what it is that we've done, to know what our progress is. It's a very natural desire on our part. And it gets to the concept of mastery as well, being able to do something really, really well, to be accomplished at a particular skill or a particular task. When individuals, have the opportunity to work on things that they are good at, right, to use their strengths, right, that engagement piece, and then to see it through, right, to finish it, they've got some sense of ownership for the project from start to finish. They can accomplish it, they can master it, they can then have ownership and take some pride in completion. Those are all really motivating in that realm of accomplishment. All right, so those are the 5 conditions that Martin Seligman defined and that he says make people self-motivated or internally motivated in their work. And it's not only at the workplace. You can see this also applies in your personal lives too, right? So things that you really love doing in your own life, maybe you'll see how some of these elements, some of these conditions are there for those activities. All right, so that's the PERMA theory. The second model that I want to bring is, again, one that many of you may be familiar with, so bear with me. This might be a refresher for you, but it's going to be new for some of you, so we'll walk through it. Daniel Pink is a neuroscientist and a researcher, a writer. He writes a lot. Anyway, he wrote a book called Drive that outlines his motivational theory, and he comes at it sort of from a neuroscience point of view. And he talks about 3 major elements that people look for. The first is autonomy. And what he means by this is when a person feels that they have authority in the work they do, autonomy, they can be self-directing. They're also self-motivated. And he talked about 4 aspects of autonomy. So being able to manage your own time, your technique, your team, and your task. So those are all things about autonomy. People like to figure out how to do things. And so that's why when you have micromanagement, people can become really demotivated, right? Because micromanagement is a way of taking away someone's autonomy, and taking away their sense of control over these different elements, right? When someone feels like they get to do the things the way they like, they can bring their own ideas to the table in a meaningful way and enhance how the project is going and what's getting done. That's the kind of autonomy that Daniel Pink talks about here. That autonomy is what's self-motivating. The second major element that he talks about here in Drive is really similar to the PERMA theory thing of accomplishment, but here Daniel Pink calls it mastery. So it's the desire to continue improving at something that matters, right? To feel like you're engaging your skills and your competencies, that you're doing the right kind of work, and as you do it, you're getting better, right? You're continually improving, you're building your mastery, you're building your competence, and along with that, you develop and improve your own sense of self, right? You're like, you view yourself as a better, higher performing individual. So those kinds of things really can be engaging if you are able to do the kind of work where you can engage your competencies and really build that mastery. That's going to motivate you. And then finally, the third aspect here is purpose. What is the purpose of what I do with my life is, kind of a way of thinking about it. And then how does that relate to what it is that I'm doing here? So people, are often left wondering, and this is a thing in our kind of back to neuroscience question that our brains always ask, why am I doing this? Why? What's the purpose? What's the meaning? Why does it matter? And so if in this condition, if people have a very clear sense of why their work matters, of what they're doing and why it's important, the importance of it, the meaning, the purpose, that's going to be motivating to help them understand that it really is important, significant work and that it really matters. And when people are doing things that they think really matter, then they're self-motivated to do it. So we can prevent others from becoming demotivated if we can attend in the drive model to these 3 conditions of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. If we can attend to those 3 conditions, we can help people to stay motivated, right? Because they had that motivation at the start. All right, so that's PERMA. That's the drive model from Daniel Pink. And now let's third look at the SCARF model. And again, apologies if you attended the in-person leader training, in-service training where this was discussed. But let's quickly look at this model. It comes from a guy named David Rock. And it looks at, again, at motivation by way of preventing demotivation. He's an author, done a lot of work, a lot of books. One of his other books that might be interesting to you all is called Quiet Leadership, which brings out some great essentials of leadership regardless of your role. But anyway, with the SCARF model, you might recall it's a kind of a bridge between neuroscience and neuroleadership, and looks at how people respond to certain challenges in the environment. So when our brain is challenged in any of these 5 elements that he outlines in the SCARF model, then people are, when we get challenged by one of them, then our brains react in a particular way. It gets stuck, it freezes, or it might retreat from the situation. And in the process, we become demotivated. We might move away from that situation. So the 5 elements, where our brains can get challenged. The first one is status. So status is our sense of position or importance relative to others, that we've got a place where we belong and a role that we fit into. Sometimes it comes with a title, but often it's really just knowing that you're that people understand who you are and what you do and how you fit in. So it's a sense of importance. The next one is certainty, which of course is the ability to predict or to have a predictable environment. So if certainty gets challenged, if we're in a really unstable situation, a really unpredictable environment where every day there's something new, or one day it's this and the next day it's that, or you have one supervisor who tells you to do one thing and a different supervisor something else, all of those challenge a sense of certainty. It makes it very difficult to work, makes it very difficult to feel connected to a task or a project or a team, because there's so much uncertainty, you don't really know what it is that you're dealing with from day to day. The third area where we can be challenged is autonomy. And this is, again, as we saw earlier, autonomy is a sense of control, right? Self-control, things that are within our realm of being able to manage. And so if we feel like nothing's within our control, if everything is totally outside of our our purview and we can't impact any of it, that can be extremely motivating because you'll just feel like, well, why bother? Because nothing I do matters anyway. Things are going to happen regardless of my efforts. So that's the importance of autonomy. The fourth one is relatedness. And this one is about, obviously, relationships and our sense of safety with other people. So in the PERMA model, we talked about positive relationships. And here in the SCARF model, it's relatedness, feeling like we're in the same group. We're part of a team or a group that we've got some relationship and connectedness among us. And it's being a part of it, being on the inside rather than being excluded and being shut out, right? So, you know, if like even as a kid picking teams for a game or whatever, how devastating it feels to be left out or to be shunned, to be in the out group. That has really powerful impacts, even among adults in a workplace environment, to be shut out or left out of a group takes the wind right out of your sails, demotivates you, and you know, we lose our enthusiasm for being a part of anything. And the last one is fairness, which I think is easy to understand, right? We all have a sense of what's fair and what's equitable, and we all want to be treated fairly, right? And to engage in things where we sort of know what the rules are and we know what we can expect if we participate. And you know, if that gets challenged, if we're, you know, operating in a system where, you know, one person does a behavior and gets treated one way and somebody else does the same thing and gets treated differently, you know, that lack of fairness can be really demotivating. Or if there's some kind of favoritism going on, it's like, well, no matter what I do, it doesn't matter because somebody else is the favorite. So, so that one's pretty, I think, easy to see. Well, a lot of them really easy to see how if these get challenged, it quickly leads to demotivation. So a question for us is to think about these 5 elements and make sure that these 5 are present for people on our teams, that they're not challenged. Because of course, if any one of them isn't present or isn't supported, then that can lead to demotivation. All right, so we just looked at these three major theories. And of course, there's a lot of other ones out there, but these I think give us a pretty solid foundation. And as you saw, there's a fair amount of overlap among them. So hopefully that you know, wasn't too confusing. I know we went through them kind of quickly, but I'm sure some of you are familiar with at least one or more of them. So I want to do a little something to help us think about what we can take away from all these theories, right? There's some overlaps and some insights here that we can draw out, and then use it to talk about some key conditions that support motivation that we can use, hopefully, with our VISTA teams. So let's take a look at those now. And full disclosure, this is a model that I'm borrowing from Kapila Gama, who some of you have met at the Leader in Service training. So he's done some work looking at these models, as well as several others. And since our brains love to have a framework that's easy to remember, Kapila put one together that pulls out some of the unique elements from those 3 theories. And to make it easier to remember, he used words that all start with the letter A. So he created something that he calls the 7A formula for supporting motivation. And we're going to take a look at it and then talk about some specific ways that you can apply it with your VISTA members on your team. So this formula says that there are 7 conditions that support motivation. These are ones that came out of all the 3 models that we just looked at. So let's take a review, and again, these will all sound familiar. So the first one is autonomy. This one we saw really in the first 2 models, maybe it's probably in all 3 models, and it was called autonomy a couple of times. So, you know, this is having control, having some authority, some ability to make impact. The second one is abilities driven. In other places, this is called a strengths-based focused. So it's having the ability to use your skills and competencies, your strengths, and put them to use in the work that you do. So that's abilities driven. The third one, alignment with life purpose. You saw this in a couple ways, talking about purpose and talking about meaning. So it's aligning the work that you do with your own personal values and the things that you care about. Number 4 is active engagement. So this is the E from PERMA. It's the opportunity to actually be involved, to have a chance to do something about it rather than just sitting on the sidelines and watching, to be actively engaged. Number 5 is accomplishment. Again, we were just looking at this in several of these models, being able to actually achieve something, right? To use your skill not just for the task itself, but for the result, developing those results and accomplishments and creating something out of that. And advancement, this was referred to as mastery by Daniel Pink in the DRIVE model. And this is being able to excel at something, to continually improve and to develop skill and to advance along and become better. And then number 7 is acknowledgement and appreciation, perhaps. So this is, you know, getting recognized for what it is that we do. You know, even though a lot of us say, you know, we do stuff not because we want the thanks, you know, or the recognition and all that, but deep down, really deep down, our brain needs some kind of acknowledgement and appreciation because that's what sends a signal back to our brain. It's the feedback, right, that reinforces that good work that we do, those good deeds and all of that. So that's acknowledgement and appreciation. So these are the 7: autonomy, abilities driven, alignment with life purpose, active engagement, accomplishment, advancement, and acknowledgement. Kind of synthesizes the key conditions out of those 3 models. So hopefully you're still with me on this and it's not too many A's to keep in your brain at one time. So we're going to shift. I've been talking a lot, and so I want to shift now back to you all and give you the opportunity to take this information that we've just looked at and then apply it to your own VISTA leader role. So I've got a question here that I want you to consider, and that is, how can we promote or provide these 7 key conditions for our VISTAs in an intentional way or by design? What can we do to make sure that our work site, our team, our VISTA project, that we're allowing VISTAs to have autonomy, that we're abilities driven, that the work they do is aligned with their life purpose, that they're actively engaged, they have a chance for accomplishment, advancement, and acknowledgement. So now you're going to have the opportunity to share your ideas with your colleagues. And we're going to do it kind of in a couple of stages. So first off, I want you to think about, we're eventually going to get to all 7 of those key conditions, but to do it so it's kind of manageable, We're going to just take a few in one batch, and then we'll look at the other ones in just a minute. So the goal is to take these general ideas and then come up with some specific, concrete ideas or examples for how you could make these things really present for your VISTA members. You know, something concrete, so that not only is it something you could implement, but some of your colleagues on the session today could implement as well. So very nicely, the first 4 conditions seem to be somewhat related to each other, so we're going to look at those together. So what strategies can you think of that would support your VISTA members' autonomy? Let's hear if you have any ideas around you know, opportunities for them to take ownership or a sense of control over events, or if there are some techniques or ideas that where you could see that maybe you or your supervisor could promote the idea of autonomy with your VISTA members. So, oh, and I should have said this at the beginning. When you put your ideas in the chat, if you would, start your post with the word autonomy. So that way later we're going to have a lot of ideas. We'll know which key condition you're referring to. And then at the end of this afterwards, I'm going to collect all these and put them together, and I can send them out to you if you would like. Just a reminder, you move to the bottom if you don't see the chat, but I think all of you have the chat open. So let's see, we've got a few things coming in. Let's see, Angela, AJ mentions first we have to build a relationship of trust. Absolutely. Let's see, Peyton, check in with VISTAs monthly on their performance measures and VAD progress. Have them talk about what they're doing right and where they're struggling. So this is active engagement and autonomy. Thank you for labeling those. Olivia says autonomy, effective training and integration into the site. You know, they're having their own work site, I'm guessing their own like desk and work location, email workspace, and a formal introduction. Absolutely. That formal introduction, don't underestimate the importance of it, because you're the ambassador, right? You're the one who opens doors for your new VISTA members. So taking the time to walk them around and show them who's who and vice versa is really great to help them have a sense of autonomy, so then they will know and others will know who they are. Great idea. Let's see, taking the time to get to know members and their abilities, skills, desires, goals, etc., to even get to the point that I can promote and help them get to a place to self-promote these first 4 conditions. That's great. So, you know, if you don't know what someone's purpose is or what their strengths are or how they like to be engaged, it's hard for you to provide that. So, you know, spending some time at the beginning to understand what it is that is motivating for them and where their values lie. Great idea. Let's see, autonomy. During the monthly cohort meetings, the VISTA hosting at their organization picks our social justice or professional development topic or speaker. I ask them to reach out so that they can network as well. So that's great. So you're giving them a very specific opportunity to take ownership of something, and then to take ownership of it, have the autonomy to do it the way they want, and in the end they get some networking benefits from that as well. Let's see, Ellie says autonomy, having VISTA members create their own work plan from their VAD. Absolutely, right? Put them in control. Great ideas. Let's see, am I going to have time to read all these? I'm going to go faster. More autonomy. Encourage my VISTAs to take ownership in the program itself. We're building a social media presence and we have a blog space. When they mention ideas in our one-on-one, but they can't bring that idea to fruition at their site, I try to find a way that our program can host that idea. All right, so that's incredible. That's moving a little bit into the accomplishment part, but also the autonomy, allowing them to have the space and the tools to implement their ideas, and then if they can't get it across the finish line to accomplishment, you're finding other ways that that can happen. That's brilliant. Let's see, Cheryl, abilities driven. Our site has all members take the strengths-based assessment, and we incorporate this into our training. Excellent. It has been absolutely one of the best tools we've included. In fact, we also invite volunteers to participate. That's incredible. And the whole strengths-based approach is one that it can be revolutionary for people, because so often in school, you know, like you take a test and you get 98% of the things right, and you only get 2% wrong, and the only thing that gets marked or noted are the wrong things, right? So we're always being pointed out, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. And we forget, like, oh yeah, well, they didn't tell us, good job, good job, good job, good job. They don't tell you that 98 times. You just hear wrong, wrong twice. So the strength flips all that around, gets people to focus on what they're really good at, and it can do wonders to elevate people's excitement and enthusiasm about their work and their own self-confidence in what it is that they can do. All right. Arena says, autonomy. Have the VISTA contribute to making the VAD projects align with the overall project goal. Absolutely. Engage them in doing that, so that way they're a partner. It's not being done to them, but they have some agency in making those decisions. Another autonomy from Cheryl. We always use name tags so nobody feels left out. First step to relationship is knowing the person's name. How true. Stephanie says, again on autonomy, I like to ask them periodically for their ideas about what they want to have trainings about, so they've been the ones who really build our training schedule for the year. When they share events coming up, I have them reach out through email to the cohort announcing it. And Anna says, we invite VISTA members to create their own professional development plans. Terrific. Okay, great, great ideas. I wasn't sure how much to expect. I should have understood that you all would be brilliant and have no shortage of ideas. So that's incredible. Let's move on, because we've got a couple other conditions here on the screen that we also want to talk about. So next up is abilities driven, right? This is a strengths-based one. So how can we create opportunities for our members to use their strengths and skills in what it is that they do? Likewise, the condition of alignment with life's purpose. This is about the opportunity to connect the project outcomes or the project activities to the VISTA's personal values and their personal individual goals, which, you know, is important for us as human beings, right? Anything we do, if it's aligned with what we care about, with, you know, our own life's purpose, then we're going to be really motivated to do it. So what are some ways that we can make sure that that is happening? And then also the active engagement. So this is the opportunity to deliver, to engage in the work itself, right? To get in there, to be part of the team, and to perform, right? It's one thing to say, yeah, I know I've got skills, but if I'm sitting on the sidelines, it's really, really frustrating, right? We want to get in there. We want to be on the field. We want to be, you know, scoring the touchdowns, or, you know, whatever the metaphor is. We want to be actively engaged. So think about some ways that you can go about supporting that with your members, or things that the organization could do, or the supervisor. So I'm going to be quiet and let you think about these other three conditions and how you might support them. All right, so Ashton says, for alignment with life purpose, my strength in Fairbanks is being a resource coordinator. I have a lot of contacts and know a lot about various agencies, so I try to make those connections for my VISTAs when I hear about their future goals. However, some of my VISTAs aren't sure what their future holds. In these cases, I actively listen to hear hints that they might not even hear or might even be aware they are giving. Great suggestion. Ollie says, also alignment with life purpose. We have a service plan document that VISTAs fill out at the beginning of their term that asks about why they chose to serve and what they're looking to get out of service. So that's great. It's right there on paper then. So it'll be easy for you to tap into. All right, so Ollie's now going to get all the requests to share that form, which is great. And of course, if you'd like to share it with me, I'm happy to send it out to everyone on this session, along with the other ideas that are being proposed here. All right, let's see, Devin, I try to set an example of acknowledging myself and others so that it's seen more as a norm to do. Success and accomplishments need to be acknowledged, and sometimes we forget to even recognize ourselves in the process. So that's great. Great example. Thank you. Here's another active engagement from Ashton. I've created feedback forms in Google for our professional development meetings to hear what our VISTAs think worked, what didn't, and what they'd like to see in the future. I don't get 100% participation on those, but they have an avenue to direct the program. So that's terrific, just giving them a really easy, simple way to get involved and to be engaged in setting the meeting topics. And let's see, active engagement. Our VISTAs are encouraged to host and facilitate trainings. At our St. Cloud retreat, the 3 St. Cloud VISTAs led roundtable discussions about their projects. This spring, a VISTA and the supervisor will be facilitating a training around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sounds great. And let's see, alignment with life purpose. As our organization is faith-based grassroots movement, we found that recruiting and interviewing process is key to moving forward. We found when a person's passion aligns with their work, it creates a stronger team. Note, we are very respectful of others' beliefs and welcome diversity. However, misalignment can create chaos in a team. Summary, full disclosure to mission and vision of the organization. Absolutely. If someone comes in and they don't know what the organization is all about, you know, if they're joining a team and they're not quite sure what the vision is for that team, it can be really, disorienting for them, and it can be problematic for the team if there's not alignment there. So having that alignment up front is absolutely critical. All right, well, I'm sure you may be having other ideas. If you share them, we will absolutely send them out to everyone so you'll be able to see them. But I want to move on because we still have 3 more of these conditions that we want to look at. So thanks for all these ideas. And now let's take a look at the last 3. And oh wait, before we do that, sorry, I forgot how I organized this presentation. So in addition to what you've just shared, I've got some other thoughts about each of these 4 these 4 conditions. So quickly take a look at those, and then we'll get to the others. All right, so let's move on and talk about autonomy. Again, as a couple of you shared, the opportunity for involvement and ownership of a project, getting member inputs. We heard about a Google form and other ways of doing that. Using the VISTA member as a spokesperson, right? So sharing that role, so it's not always you as the VISTA leader who's taking on that role. Engaging them as decision makers and problem solvers, which a couple of you talked about specific ways, and then allowing them to be creative and self-directing. So creating their own plan, as a couple of you talked about, or aligning their VAD with the overall project plan. Great ideas. So let's look at abilities-driven. Some ideas here. Again, it's the focus on letting them use their strengths and their skills, doing some kind of process where you're helping them recognize what their skills, talents, and strengths are, whether that's through some kind of an assessment or some other activity, and then helping them to actually use their strengths, talents, and skills, and do that within their VAD work, within the VISTA project, and then see if there are ways that they have skills that maybe don't fit with the VAD, but they could do it outside, and they still get some sense of satisfaction and engagement from that, so that can help them be happier all around. And then lastly, finding ways for their strengths to be applied to enhance the overall project outcome. So, maybe somebody has a skill that you didn't really expect anyone to have, but it could be really useful in putting together the annual report or doing a team offsite or something, giving them those opportunities. Alignment with life purpose. Here you can connect the project outcomes or the project activities or their VAD activities to their personal goals, so that if it's not obvious to them, you can help make it a little bit more obvious. You can also help them see how the VISTA work can lead to their long-term professional goals. And, tapping in the project opportunities, the work they get to do on the project with their life's passion, the stuff that they can learn as a VISTA member to their life goals. And then the social connections, all the networking that they get to do as a VISTA member, those also can support their life goals and passions. So lots of opportunity there. And then finally with active engagement, allowing them to get off the sidelines and actually perform, to become active. Make sure that the things they're engaged in are challenging to them in a way that's meaningful. One opportunity is to allow your VISTA members to serve as a knowledge broker among various stakeholders. So it could be among other VISTAs, it could be staff at the organization, or it could be community partners and community member stakeholders. You can solicit their input. A couple of you mentioned this on the VAD or the project enhancement, so that they can help improve those or refine them, increase the alignment among them. You can engage your VISTA members to present your progress reports, or if you're doing an update for the team or others in the organization about what you've accomplished. They can take turns doing that as well. And then you can coach them and model for your VISTA members particular leadership opportunities within the team. And a couple of you alluded to that as well. Okay, so I now have actually done the little recap of those. So now let's move in for the other 3 conditions that we looked at, and that's accomplishment, advancement, and acknowledgement. So again, these 3 are related. We'd love to hear your ideas in the chat about how you can implement these or support these conditions within your VISTA team. So just as a reminder, the accomplishment piece, this is allowing VISTAs or supporting them to actually complete their project or their VAD successfully, or even a particular task to help them have a sense of accomplishment. Advancement, so this is to grow professionally and personally, to you build upon their previous accomplishments and go to the next level. And then acknowledgement, appreciation. This is recognizing their efforts and their contributions, their qualities, accomplishments, things they've learned among your team members. So let's see what we've got here. Arena, active engagement. We have the crew app. VISTAs can communicate their accomplishments and share pictures of their service. That sounds terrific. So what? Let's see. Let's see. Devin had a comment earlier. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find it. Let's see. A couple more on acknowledgement. We sent out holiday care packages to thank VISTAs for their service. That sounds really great. I'm sure they appreciate those. Under accomplishment, we have a monthly newsletter where I brag about our VISTA work. I love it. I also try to encourage bragging about small wins in our bi-weekly cohort meetings, right? Because, big wins are really the result of a lot of small wins, and so I think everything is worth celebrating. Those are terrific. And of course, there are lots of ways you can even share the responsibility for acknowledgement, right? So at a team meeting, you can ask each person to do an acknowledgement of somebody else, something that they've seen in the last week or the last month, some way that somebody helped them, or some way they saw someone else working really well or accomplishing something. It doesn't have to all come from you. And obviously, it can help model for your VISTA members, but also, it feels really nice to acknowledge somebody else. So that can be a great opportunity for your VISTA members as well. All right, so let's see. Cheryl mentions a book she read called How Full Is Your Bucket? And she's taken it upon herself to fill our team members' buckets without making a big deal about it. And the process that fills my bucket adds a little something without a great deal of fanfare. That is terrific. Accomplishment and acknowledgement there. All right, thank you, Ashton. All right, so Devin, acknowledgement and advancement. Part of a state advisory group regarding national service, but it's heavily state-national focused. I'm trying to help educate the organization about VISTA members I work with. Go Devin, we love it. As well as trying to identify other VISTAs throughout the state so their service can be recognized as well. Kudos to you for that. All right, keep those ideas coming. I'm going to share a few thoughts that I've got around these three. So we'll take a look at accomplishment. So here, again, it's the opportunity to complete a particular task, project, or the VAD successfully. Making sure that they've got clear purpose and direction for what it is that they're doing will help make it easier for them. Also having SMART-based objectives for their VAD assignment, so specific, measurable, the rest of those SMART. Make sure they're realistic and achievable outcomes, and then make sure they've got what they need, the equipment, the knowledge, skills, resources to accomplish what it is they're being asked to do. For advancement, make sure that you provide them opportunities to grow both personally and professionally. And it's really helpful to have a sense of what your members' development and training needs are. So some of you talked about doing some kind of a formal or not so formal assessment, asking them, particularly when they come on board. Opportunities for new skills and knowledge development. So, giving them training opportunities, whether it's within the project or going outside, if there are resources to support that, maybe a little tiny budget that they could go take a workshop or something. And then when your members express the need for improvement in some way, or they demonstrate it, addressing that with them, helping them to see where their skills can improve, and doing it in a really positive way, not like just coming down and saying, hey, here's where you fell short, but showing them where they can really improve and develop their skills. And then helping them to strive for the next level, helping them see what it is that could be coming next to them, for them, and giving them a little bit of encouragement and guidance to help them to grow and to get to whatever that next level is for them. And then finally, an acknowledgement, making sure to take advantage of every opportunity for your members to be recognized and appreciated, whether that's internally or externally, newsletters, meetings, shout outs, the kinds of things that you all have shared. Getting your members to collaborate on the progress reviews of the project so that they're all contributing to what's being done, cataloging the progress that's made so they can all feel much more a part of that. Acknowledging positive outcomes and successes wherever they come, and giving recognition for those accomplishments, both big and small, and credit for good work, even if we haven't gotten over the finish line yet, even if it hasn't resulted in the outcomes we want to see, appreciating people's efforts and the work that's being done as well. All right, so that was a really quick, and I realize we only have a little bit of time left, so let's see, we've got just a couple more slides I want to show you. Another way of sort of tying all this together is to look at 4 guiding principles around motivation. Again, these are just a way to sort of sum up what we've been looking at and talking about. So first, as some of you said in your own words in our activities, getting to know your members as individuals is really important. Again, knowing them as a person, not just their role or their assignment. Knowing what goals they have, their interests, their strengths. It's a great way to help them if they start to become demotivated, or if you can even prevent those conditions that are going to undermine their motivation. It's going to help them be a lot more successful, and they're going to feel, really supported as individuals, as a human being. So knowing them as people first, and then as in their professional role second. Number 2, using an individualized approach to leading your members. So this is getting rid of the one-size-fits-all or the cookie-cutter approach, and instead using a very individualized approach. Everybody's unique, of course, so what works for one isn't necessarily going to work for another, and if you don't make the time to get to know your members or understand what their challenge is, they're going to feel that they're not really being supported, that you're just kind of going through the motions. So, so having some knowledge of your members is really going to help you approach them with what's going to work for them. And number 3, this one is maybe goes a little beyond your purview as a leader, because it could require that everybody, the supervisor, the manager, organizational leadership, anybody who's leading in a workplace, to have to do a mind shift. And instead of thinking about what's wrong with the person, we need to replace that question and ask ourselves, what's wrong with the environment? What's wrong with the situation that could be making this person behave this way? And shifting the question is going to help us look at the conditions, some of the demotivating factors that are present, the conditions that are not present there, that are the conditions that are not being provided. And once we start looking at it that way, then we can start fixing the environment, providing those supports and conditions that are really going to motivate the people on our team. And a leader's business is not fixing people, right? It's about fixing the environment and providing them the right resources, guidance, and all of those conditions that we looked at earlier. And then number 4, be genuine with your efforts and believe in your members, because as you know, if you believe in your members and their ability, if you believe in them as people, then they're going to live up to those expectations. You know, there's been a lot of research, psychological research about self-fulfilling prophecies and the kind of expectations that we have of others, and people may live up to those expectations but not go beyond them. So you know, we want to make sure that we're not inadvertently undermining our folks by not believing in them or not believing that they can excel. So those are just 4 guiding principles, again, that kind of support a lot of what we've been talking about here in terms of motivation. So we've only got a couple minutes left, but I kind of want to give those minutes back to you all to see if there are any other thoughts that you have about how you might apply what it is that we've been talking about today. So you've given a lot of great ideas already, and I appreciate all of those. But before we sign off, I want to just see if there are any other opportunities or examples or suggestions that you have that you'd like to share. Olivia says, I like the VISTA members generating their own work plans. Absolutely. I mean, don't we all really want to be able to do that, right? To have some autonomy, to generate our own plans and have ownership of it. Thank you, Irena, for the shout out there. Really appreciate it. All right, well, I don't want to hold you all here. If you've got any ideas, feel free to share them. We'll stay on here and I'll collect those. I want to just again point to some resources that I shared earlier. A number of books here. There's the Strengths Finder 2.0 in the bottom left by Tom Rath. Some of you referenced that. And the work we looked at by Daniel Pink and David Rock and Martin Seligman all are here. And then I want to leave you with a quote before we sign off. It comes from a former First Lady. Eleanor Roosevelt said, to handle yourself, use your head. To handle others, use your heart. So I thank you very much for all your participation in this session. Your ideas are really great. I will collect those and send them around. When you exit, you're going to be asked to do a quick survey. You'll see a link there in the chat right now. Quick little survey monkey, and thank you all for your participation today and for any ideas you want to share in our little online survey. I hope to see you again soon. Thanks.